Okay, so we are now recording. So we're here to hear from Ibrahim Shihadi and his representatives about the proposed development at his property at 1233 West Pratt. I think we all know why you're here. I will let you know that we're going to start off with about 30 minutes of a presentation from Ibrahim and his team, just to say who they are, what they're looking to do, why they want to do it. After that, you're going to have some direct Q&A time, so we'll have discussion. As I mentioned, we'll monitor the chat, we'll call on people. We'll have about 20 minutes there, and this is just an opportunity for you guys to directly ask Ibrahim and his team any burning questions you have about this project. Of course, you can ask questions of myself in the office. And then after that Q&A, we're actually going to, say farewell to our guests, and we're going to spend the last bit of time actually together. So we've got, we'll be using the breakout room function. We've got some survey that we'll be sharing a link with. We'll also be using the in-Zoom polling functions as well. And Torrance is going to get us kicked off with that soon, just to kind of get an idea of who's in the room and to get some feedback while we're in the meeting together. Before you go into the breakout rooms, you'll spend about maybe 10 or 15 minutes together in the breakout rooms discussing with neighbors some of your thoughts. We've got some discussion questions. Then we'll come back together just to talk next steps and how you can give more input from here and what the process will look like. So does that sound pretty good to folks? I'm actually going to pass it to Torrance, to you for a moment, if you would like to do the poll to kind of see who's in the room. Yeah. Definitely.
Well, I want to reiterate Alderwoman Hadden's points. Thank you for coming tonight virtually, of course. I know it's tough times during this pandemic. I'm glad we're able to spend this time together on a very important topic for tonight. When I reiterate, please, let's all remain respectful. But also value each other's opinions to the best of our abilities. I'm going to launch a poll. This poll is mainly just say who's in the room, where you're at, where you're coming from. Very basic questions, only 3. So I'm about to launch it now. Please answer it within how much time you want to give Alderwoman Hadden? I
don't know. Should we do a countdown? I want to see how fast. Now we'll just kind of monitor how quickly you guys answer.
We'll monitor, but yeah, as fast as you guys can, that'll be very helpful so we get the meeting along.
And then I guess I'll share as well, as we, some of you may not be familiar with our 49th Ward community zoning process, but this is the first public meeting. It doesn't mean that it will be the last. So I know as people have been giving input, we're doing this in a way that is open, transparent, and participatory as possible. We have had several meetings with Ibrahim and his team in advance of this for them to initially bring their first proposal. Through the pandemic, I'll say it has changed a few times before it's gotten to what you'll see today. And so, you know, what you're seeing today has been with some input and feedback from our office, some coordination, and then what we'll do from the community meeting and then the survey that will launch after that, which will be open for a couple of weeks, will be to take more of that feedback and that input to give it to Ibrahim and his development team for them to work on that and to see what changes or adjustments we might deem necessary. All right, looks like we got most of you responded there.
Most have responded thus far. 84%.
Yeah, okay, so it looks about
close to the property.
Yeah. Pretty good.
A lot of people that live for 10 years. Yeah, that's good. A lot of owners on here.
Yeah, so we'll as we share the results, you guys can see the kind of who's here. All right. Thank you all for that. Thank you, Torrance. I want to introduce Ibrahim, and Ibrahim, for you to introduce yourself and your team. and we need you to unmute.
My name is Ibrahim Shahada. My company name is Creative Designs, and my team is Ms. Sarah Burns, and James Young, and that's it. That's all what I have here for my team.
Yeah.
And
It's okay. I can share our screen and we can put some images up and introduce you more thoroughly, Ibrahim, if that's okay.
that's fine.
And everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Thanks everybody for coming this evening. What you're going to see tonight from us is about 16 slides, 14 of which you may have seen by way of Alder Hadden's website in the last couple of weeks. So no changes there, but what we wanted to do was do a brief introduction, let you know who we are, and where we're coming from. As Ibrahim mentioned, he is the president and owner of Creative Designs. They're a development and management company that's based in Ravenswood. He's been developing multifamily residential property all over the Chicagoland area since the 80s, specifically in your neighborhood. We've listed a number of the projects that he currently continues to manage, some of which you'll see in our presentation fairly close by to our building, like 1263 West Pratt. I think Ibrahim, and I want to speak for you, but I wanted to highlight the fact that Creative Designs is not just a fly-by-night intruder to the neighborhood. You have roots in this neighborhood. You continue to manage property in this neighborhood, and you would like, I think, to develop this property in light of that fact, and want to continue that relationship with this community. Some of the things you recently worked on are in Kenwood, Hyde Park, Rogers Park, even some properties in Evanston. On the right of the slide is a brief introduction to Booth Hansen. I'm an architect and principal at Booth Hansen. We've been around also for a while, since 1980. And this is our wheelhouse. Multifamily residential properties is something we do quite regularly, and I think in my mind quite thoughtfully, in and around Chicago and elsewhere, as well as doing other things. But this is, I think, why Ibrahim came to us for this project. Did you want to add anything, Ibrahim?
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know I have been in Rogers Park since the early 80s. I bought my first building in Ashland and Estes, and I owned it for 10, 12 years. Then I developed a condo building. Then I started buying properties which was run down. I'll just give one example, which was the corner of Sheridan and Greenleaf, the southeast corner. That building was 68 units, was run down, was in real bad shape. It was owned by the worst landlord in the city. And that was a turning point in my mind to encourage people to come and develop and improve properties in Rogers Park. So we rehab that building, 68 units, and we develop it as condo quality. We own it as a rental for a while, then we sold it. And the people who bought it sold it as condos, which become homes for 68 families. And there are quite other buildings. There are a list of them there, which we did in Rogers Park. And we're still doing that. And we hope with this project, we'll bring in additional homes, to some of the people who desire to live in the area.
Thanks.
And we are developing this building not to flip it, to keep it for the long term. This building and the building in Pratt and the others. Okay, we invest for long term, for the future, for our kids and others.
Thanks, Ibrahim.
Okay, that's
Great.
that's
Yeah. So we just have about 14 slides here. Some of you have already seen these. So my intention is to walk you through what it is that might not have been apparent in your looking at them on your own. Additionally, a lot of the comments and questions that have been coming to Alder Hadden's office have been filtered to us. And I've kind of kept them in my mind as I present our project to you to try to highlight and answer some of them as we go. And then at the end, we'll land on the list of those questions and comments and address anything that has come up in the process of this discussion. So here's our project. We are on the south side of Pratt Street. We are mid-block. This is 1233 Pratt. To the right is a sort of a large elevation of the typical side and front view of our building. It's meant to show that we're being contextual. For what we're thinking here, a red masonry building, a red brick building with cast stone accents and dark metal detailing around the windows. We're a symmetrical building. I wouldn't say we're a strictly traditional building, but our intention here is to really match the context in a meaningful and thoughtful way. The aerial diagram here is kind of hopefully going to help you orient yourselves. So bottom left-hand corner is Sheridan Road corridor. As I said, we're on the south side of Pratt, and you can see that in the center here. We really wanted to show you this for a few reasons. The buildings to our south along West Columbia Avenue are typically 3- and 4-story buildings, 3.5, 4.5-story buildings. We have commercial 5-story buildings and mixed-use buildings along Sheridan. And then mid-block across the street to us almost directly along the alley is a 13-story, probably the tallest building in the neighborhood, rental property. And the 9-story at the corner is the Seville. This is the property that we mentioned previously, 1263 West Pratt, I believe, that Ibrahim currently manages. We also have a couple of pictures here. So for those of you who know the site, this is a given, but for those of you who aren't familiar specifically with it, it is a site that has been cleared for a while, and it is meant, it has been serving as a surface parking lot for a while for our neighbors as well. It's nicely fenced and it's nicely paved at this point. So that's where we're sitting. Now although we don't have a full shadow study, and certainly Booth Hansen is capable of doing that for these projects. At this scale, the size building, we typically don't. But what we are showing here is a sort of morning sun coming from the east, which is your bottom left-hand corner, to show how that sun how that shadow would be cast towards the west. I think mostly what we want to remind people here is that our ability to cast shadows to the south is not going to happen just based on where we are. So the 3- and 4-story residential to the south are protected from any shadows that we might cast, and the shadows to the north would cast across West Pratt Street typically, and only in the winter months would those be long dark shadows, but we feel like they would blend in with some of the taller properties to our north and to our west. I want to spend a little extra time on this site plan because I think it tells a lot about our project. What you're seeing here is a first floor plan of our building. We are 3 50-foot parcels, so we're 150 feet wide along Pratt, which is here, and we're 139 feet to the alley, to the depth north to south. And we're flanked by 50-foot lots to our east and west. The dominant programming of our first floor is enclosed parking. So that's what you're seeing in the sort of gray area and these blue rectangles. Additionally, we have sort of a entry canopy in this peach area and a centered entry lobby, offices, and a pair of elevators and stairs that serve our 7 stories above. I think what is important to note here is currently there is a curb cut or a sort of an interruption in the parkway planters here to allow access and egress to the surface lot. Our intention here is to, since we're currently, other than the alley interruption to our about 150 feet to the east, we'd like to remove that curb cut and maintain a single walk, an uninterrupted walk along the frontages along Pratt. And in turn, because we have what we perceive as a fairly light parking traffic count, we'd like to usher people through the alley to parking access points, multiple parking access points. We're splitting the parking in half here, about 20 cars per pair of doors here. And what's important to note from our perspective here is we also have a loading, move in and trash berth that sits next to our building. It's in our side setback of 14 feet. If I'm reading that correct, sorry, I think that says 13 feet. Our intention there is to provide that those move-ins and that loading fully off of the alley, and to minimize interruptions of our parkers across the alley. To supplement the parking that we are putting on this first floor, we're showing 5, 6, 7 additional spaces 50 feet to the west of us in the backyard of another property that Ibrahim currently owns, and that's also adjacent to the C-shaped building here, which is the Seville 1263 West. Sorry, one more thing here. So setbacks. We're 15 feet setback from the sidewalk, which is our front setback along Pratt. This is to code and a little bit further than the typical houses along Pratt. We're 14 feet from our side setbacks to the edge of our building. And then at the back along the alley, we're building our garage to that alley to maximize our parking. But you'll see in the section on our next slide, which is a section drawing cut through the building looking west with Pratt Street on the right, and this sort of entry and service corridor shown in peach. What you'll see, if you see here, is the existing alley, the typical sort of private and multi-car private garages across the alley. And then our garage, which sits right on the alley, but then sets back 30.5 feet or so from the rear property line. And just for context, these are small, I apologize, but across the street to our north is that 13-story rental building, just to give you an idea of how close that is. And this is our sort of meant to highlight our unit mix. We're showing 78 units in this building on 6 unit floors above parking. We've got 18 studios. We have 46 one bedrooms, which accounts for about 60% of our unit count. We have 12 2 bedrooms and 2 3 bedrooms. And we'll get a little bit more into the plans just to show you. This is a little bit larger of a plan of the first floor, just to focus on the front of the building. So as mentioned previously, we have sort of a covered entry canopy leading to the entry lobby. Behind a gate and sort of bushes here, we're intending a sort of community garden, community outdoor space for our residents. And behind that same gate, we might even provide additional parking for bikes along that side. And then there's free sort of passage that is secure along the edges of our building for access to and from the garage, loading, and so forth. Trash and loading, as I mentioned, happen at this bottom southeast corner, and enter straight into our garage and straight to a trash room that is fully internal to our building. Likewise, move-ins and such would follow that same dash path and find their way to the back door of a service elevator. The second service elevator to the east is our, it would be a swing car. So we have 2 passenger elevators, one that operates as a service car. And then this is our floor right above the garage, our second floor. It's very typical, very similar to the ones on the floors above, with the exception of this orange colored space, which is our shared interior amenity space. It's basically 2 units that we're turning into an amenity space. And our thought here, and we'll show later a perspective view standing in this room looking out, we would have roughly 1,000 square feet of outdoor space to complement that interior space with a kitchen, a couple bathrooms. But really, it's a very symmetrical plan. So what you're seeing out on the east and east and west are very similar, with a couple of exceptions. Our larger units, the 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, occupy corners typically, really well lit and well with great views. Typically then on the floors above that second level is roughly 13 units per floor. And again, they're served by our 2 stairs and our 2 elevators. And a couple of different, this is getting granular, but a larger 3 bedroom that occupies the space of 2 smaller units grabs the corner at the top levels. And this is really meant to make properly sized units for small families in our minds. And then the roof, although it's not occupiable, it is served by a service elevator in the event that we'll have to maintain any of the mechanical equipment on the roof. But we're showing some low maintenance green roof patches for any of our neighbors who are looking down at us. But again, this wouldn't be an occupiable space for our tenants. And then what you're seeing in these rectangles is just the HVAC, the heating and ventilation condensers in an array on the roof. And of course, they would be shielded behind a parapet wall that you've seen in the perspective, just to keep them out of sight. And then elevationally, the top elevation is our north elevation from Pratt looking south. So you see kind of a series of the beautiful single family homes along the street. And our building sits about 100 feet from the Seville that's hatched on the right here. Just a few highlights there. You can see sort of the poking out on the top of the mechanical penthouse that we saw in the roof plan. That's about 25, 30 feet from the front of the building. So you wouldn't see it from the front. Pre-finished metal cornice, brick veneer on the entirety of the building all the way to the ground. Pre-finished metal spandrel panels that are the sort of gray metal panels that are separating the windows floor to floor. Metal windows, a cast stone belt course along the bottom, and this community garden that kind of drapes across the east half of our building facing Pratt. Really the intent here on the west elevation is to show both. We're fairly symmetrical here. So the east and west elevation would be very similar and would be an extension of the materials that happen along the north facade. And that would go for the alley elevation as well. And then we have kind of a highlights page that you may have seen as well, but kind of wanted to go through what we're dealing with here. So 1233 West Pratt, as I mentioned, it's a 20,850 square foot parcel. It's 150 by 139. It's currently zoned R2. And in this square, you can see what that means from a setbacks requirement, a parking height requirement, MLA, which is basically the bulk and density requirement from the city that dictates units allowed on a site. We're requesting a zoning of RM6 in the bottom left half here. This would allow for additional units, additional height, and it will allow for as many as 89 units with 30% studios with a height of roughly 110 feet. I forgot if I mentioned this, but we're topping out our roof at under 80 feet. So that's a reduction from that height. And then the setback requirements on the bottom left, the 15-foot side setbacks, the 15-foot front setback, and the roughly 41.5 feet rear setback. And that would be for any residential units above the garage, above 18 feet above the ground. And on the right is that perspective view from the second floor amenity space looking out to the outdoor space that they would then look further south to our neighbors across the alley. A few highlights here. We're looking at 78 rental units on the site. Again, 14 2 and 3 bedrooms. So 18% of these units are, in our minds, family sized. We're providing 44 parking spaces to support those units at a count of 0.56 spaces per unit. We have 20 bike spaces, all of which are housed inside our parking garage. We have the one off-street loading berth for trash and deliveries and move-ins that we showed you on our southeast corner. Again, the garage access points, our feeling is creating multiples of those will help alleviate single points of congestion and give some options. The 80-foot tall building is under the 110-foot allowable, as I mentioned. The project in its state that you see here uses approximately 73,000 square feet of FAR, and that's less than the 91.7 that would be allowed with the RM4, the 4.4 multiplier for RM6. The reduce, so in red, what we're showing here, just to highlight, are the items that we are asking for. The reduced side setbacks from 15 to 13 feet. So we're asking for a 2-foot reduction on either side of our building. We're asking for a approximately 9-foot reduction to our rear setback from 41 and change to 32 and change. And we're providing 44 parking spaces, which is 0.56 spaces per unit, which is less than required. We are not a TOD, and for those, I'm sure most of you know what a TOD is, but we believe we're well located to public transportation, but by the numbers, we are just shy of being the requisite 1,300 and so feet from the Morris station to our northwest. So we don't qualify for that. A few things just to mention at the bottom here as well to finish off the green enhancements. We do think that there's a continuing and growing need for e-charging stations for our garage. So we do intend to provide those, and secure and well-located bicycle storage, I think in our minds encourages transportation options that don't require cars. We are providing multiple common and private outdoor spaces for our tenants. I didn't highlight it, but on the second floor adjacent to our common area deck are 3 small terraces for 3 units facing south. and we're planning for green roofs on the roof. Again, the Pratt curb cut that we spoke about on the site plan going away, I think allows us to create a greener walk for our pedestrians, a safer and more accessible walk through the extents of Pratt from Sheridan all the way west. So we'd like to see that happen as well. And that brings us to our last page. I tried to answer most of these in the process of talking about it, but I don't know how best to handle the questions. Should we? I'll leave that up to Torrance and Maria. We can.
I'm thinking about maybe if you want to just go ahead and pose the common questions that you got in advance and answer them, and then we'll go into the live Q&A.
Yes.
And just make sure you read them too, because I know not everyone will be able to see the questions here on the screen.
Yes, of course. Yeah, so these were most, aside from, I think, one that came in late today to Torrance. I don't know if I have it on here, but try and touch on all these if we haven't already. Question number one at the top is, what are your primary reasons for constructing this building? Ibrahim, you and I talked about this afternoon. And you already touched on it on this call. I think you have a commitment to this neighborhood, and you are in the development and management business, and you would like to continue that relationship in this neighborhood long term. Is that fair to say?
That's for sure. And I noticed one of the comments was that we only trying to make money. I mean, this is a business deal. At the same time, it's beneficial to us and to the neighborhood. We're trying to create good housing and bring people to the area and to create jobs. And this is a normal thing people do business, like opening grocery store or restaurant, etc. We are in the development business, and in the process, we think to create a better neighborhood, to create better housing and affordable housing.
Yeah, and I think from a community benefit standpoint, you're delivering new tenants in potentially a new property that's going to stand above some of your competition, and will be bringing more vibrancy to your local commercial space along Sheridan. And I do believe between the Sheridan bus corridor and the metro, the Morse station to the west, I think this is a really well located site for young tenants and young families.
It's gonna step in. There isn't much area to create any new housing in the whole Rogers Park. There are very few vacant lots, and that's one of the very few there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Question two, how will the neighbors surrounding the building benefit from this construction? I think we touched on that a little bit already. How many of them have been contacted and aware of this meeting? I know these drawings have been posted on Alder Hadden's website for a couple weeks. I'm not sure exactly how many people were contacted, but I don't know if that's easy to measure.
We
have.
Oh, it's okay, Ibrahim. I'll just speak to the outreach. So, we typical outreach things, flyering, notification, social media kind of posts, as well as the newsletter. And then in answering that question and one that's kind of in the chat too, for those who joined after I did the intro, this meeting is to get community feedback. This is not for a yes/no decision. So we will take this feedback, we will synthesize it, we'll share back to the community what people thought, we'll give this to Ibrahim and his team. And this is an ongoing process. So this isn't a yes/no, this is absolutely the space for folks to have these discussions, ask these questions, so we can get a better sense of what this fit may be.
And we'll have breakout rooms later on this meeting, so that'll definitely be a time for everyone to explore and really explore what's going on with what they feel about the site.
Thanks. Okay, number 3, thank you for allowing your tenants to park in the gravel lot this summer. It helped reduce parking issues on the nearby blocks. However, if this building is constructed, where will these people park, and will there be adequate parking for the new residents? Your plan calls for 78 units and 42 parking spaces. That's actually should be 45, but that's a misprint probably. But yeah, again, we do think we're well located here for non-driving tenants. And you know, Ibrahim, you certainly the lot as it stands would continue to serve your neighbors until it's time to, you know, create a construction site there. But I don't know what else we can say about that. What impact will the parking area that is currently planned have on the houses behind the building? This includes 1, gas car fumes, garbage can issues, and increased use of an already overused alleyway. We have heard that concern from a couple of you, and I know that was hot on Alder's office's mind too. Again, we are accessing our garage from the alley. We do think the way that we're doing it creates some more options and not just a single access point, which might help. We think I can't speak to the garbage can issues specifically. I know that there won't be any garbage cans from our side of the alley, as we have ample room off the alley to collect garbage and tow them away. So my hope is that we're doing what we can to alleviate some of these concerns. And as to regulating the overuse of the alleyway, we would certainly be open to talking with CDOT and you know, whoever it is that could be a you know, help mitigate those issues, maybe with some signage, let's say, if it's a two-way concern. How long will construction take, and what kind of noise inconvenience should neighbors anticipate? Can you can you assure them that the foundations of their buildings will not be affected by this construction? To the last question, certainly we would, you know, we always take the utmost care to not affect construction next door. We are 13 feet away from the property line of our neighbors, and then another 10 or 11 feet likely to the face of our buildings next door. You know, what you didn't see tonight was a basement plan, and our intention there was to limit the amount of interruptions we make to, you know, that building a garage would create. So we think that would help mitigate any concerns there. The construction for a project of this size could easily be anywhere from 14 to 16 months. That is typical for a building of this size in our experience. And what impact, what kind of noise and inconveniences, you know, there's always a logistics plan with a contractor that we will, I'm sure, be working in consort with the Alder's office, along with CDOT and the requisite city organizations, to make sure that that is done in a way that is suitable for as suitable as it can be for all of our neighbors. Number 6, how will adding 78 units of housing affect the rental values of nearby property owners? This is a great question. It's, of course, really hard to answer, not just because of the times we live in, but because some of that market is built on Ibrahim's current rental properties nearby. So I think, Ibrahim, I don't know if you want to speak to this one with any more specificity.
Well, I think our rental going to be just market rate, and we're going to keep it the same way it's now. And our goal is hopefully in 5 years, we will start having cash flow. I think for the first 5 years, we're not going to break even. We're going to be funding part of the cost of this project. So we're creating housing at affordable cost.
Yeah, of course, there's always risk in this process, but certainly now there's potentially more risk because we really don't know where we're headed. But let's hope we're all heading out of the pandemic and looking to greener pastures.
If I may,
Yes.
while we're kind of on this subject, just because there's a few questions and some people sharing information, I'm not sure how accurate it is, but as we talk about the units currently available, the units that you're proposing, what are vacancy rates right now? You know, how's, you know, like how full, I guess, is the Seville, and within kind of a normal perspective of your kind of ebb and flow of vacancy rates. Because I think some of the questions that folks have are, you know, do we need more units? And some folks have proposed accurately, we always need more housing units. That does help with affordability, but specifically to those questions of on this block, like within the Seville, what do vacancy rates look like for you now?
You want me to answer this? Our vacancy rate always has been really low, you know, because our rents are very reasonable. At the present time, it's slightly higher, but not much. We are operating at 8 to 10% vacant. In the past, we operated at 3 to 5% vacancy. And we expect after this the crisis we are in, I expect in 6 months to 1 year, things will start easing back to normal. And I think people love to live in the city. They love to live close to transportation. And I don't see any problem. I think the rental rate is always going to be 3 to 7% because people just move in and out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Ibrahim.
Oh, sorry, James and Alderwoman. This is Sarah Barnes. If I may just opine briefly on that, we've been doing a lot of work with the Department of Housing, especially in the last 12 to 18 months, and in particular, more recently in light of the current just extreme and exceptional circumstances that are affecting not just our city, but the universe in general. And right now the trend is absolutely moving more towards apartments and rentals, unfortunately, due to a lot of exigent circumstances, including the necessary property tax increases that are going on in the city, as well as unemployment and the such. It's becoming more difficult, even more difficult barrier for entry into ownership, the ownership side of residential, and therefore many people are either moving away from ownership and towards apartments, or even myself included. I recently had to sell my my home, my condominium, because I couldn't assume the property taxes any longer, and I moved into a rental. So the Commissioner of Housing they are keeping statistics on exactly what you just said, and believe it or not, even through the pandemic, we're seeing that the occupancy numbers in the apartment buildings throughout the city, so this would be an average, are upwards of 80, almost 90%. So there really is a need for it. And as Ibrahim said, that he's very vested in the community. So we're hopeful that this is an alternative to ownership for right now, and as well, there's going to be bringing in even more affordable and economically responsible dwelling units into the neighborhood.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
I want to move us into our live Q&A, because I think we've got some good discussions going, and
Yeah.
James and the team have answered some of the questions people submitted before. So James, just so we can see people's faces, if you wouldn't mind ending your screen share, knowing we can come back if folks have questions. And folks have been using the chat, which is great. You can also use the raise your hand function if you would like. And let's have you ask some direct questions. And if you can do me a favor, and if a question that you have that's pretty similar has already been asked or answered, if you can maybe ask a different question, that would be great. Okay, we've got Ken. And if folks could say your name, and if you can introduce your name, your pronouns, I guess if you live in the ward, that would be helpful. So Ken.
Hi, thank you. And it's good to see lots of Roger input happening in the chat. I clicked the button pretty quickly there, but I think my question is this, how long has the owner had the property? I'll be very transparent in my question. My question is, did the same owner have the property who had the problem with putting up a unpermitted parking lot that flooded homes nearby? And if that's the case, so I just want to see what mitigation efforts and would be made for that, because that's obviously a cause of concern. Thanks.
Thanks, Ken, for your question. So I'll let Ibrahim and his team answer that first. How long have you owned the property? And yes, Ibrahim was the owner of the property with the parking lot, just to end that piece. Ibrahim, go ahead.
I own approximately 2.5 years. And unfortunately, I disagree with you. There was no flooding at all. People claimed they had flooding, but that was not the correct information, because the lot have a drainage, which even we improved it during the rain, and there was never a flood toward the neighbors of the property. And I'll challenge anybody to show us any flood or any seepage which was caused by this parking lot.
So I'll step in. So 2.5 years. I want to recognize, I appreciate your answer, Ibrahim, but we did have multiple residents complain about flooding in their space. I will say that because of those complaints and in working with Ibrahim and his team, we did encourage him, and he did work with the city's law department to come into compliance on that lot space. And I'll say, we appreciate him working and coming compliant on the property. There were some things done before I came in office that were allowed to happen that shouldn't have been as far as the permits, but the property, he's fully compliant. We are in conversations and will continue to be in conversations, especially with immediate neighbors, to make sure that there are good neighbor relations there in addressing any kind of continuing issues.
I can speak also. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say to piggyback on everything that was said there, the way that we intend to mitigate those issues moving forward for a project of this size, typically you will have to have a plan in place to detain stormwater. By that, I mean a tank potentially would happen underneath the ground of our building and would slow that stormwater's return back to the city system in a way that would, in our minds, help potential flooding issues and likely be an improvement.
And the last thing I'll say on that is I know that we have flooding issues along Pratt there and stormwater drainage regardless. And so I think that, if this project were to move forward, working to help address and improve that situation would be a priority. So thanks for that question, Ken, and thanks, Ibrahim and James. Next, I have Tom Heineman.
Yeah, I'm a owner of a 3-flat on East Lake Terrace. I've been in the neighborhood since 1978. I have a question for James, the architect. Have you considered charging stations or 220 lines in your garage for electrical vehicles? because that is going to
Yes.
be the future.
Yep. Yeah, we agree. We did highlight that in our highlights page. I'm sorry if it was a small text on our bottom right-hand corner of that slide, but I think Ibrahim intends to install some of those because he knows that's a growing interest to tenants that would likely inhabit this building.
Yeah, the thing is, the cars being produced now, the Teslas and a lot of them, they don't even need charging stations. All they need is a 220 line. So it would seem to me if you'd want to put several,
Yeah.
thinking ahead.
Yeah, absolutely.
And my
Yeah.
other question related to that would be, have you considered, you talked about a green roof, have you considered solar panels?
We always do. We haven't broached that topic with Ibrahim yet, but that is certainly a topic we will be addressing. We're always eager to get solar panels on all of our properties, especially ones with developers that intend to have long-term commitments to their properties, because those guys can really see that value.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. David.
Hi there. As you can see from the chat, there's a lot of talk about affordable housing here.
David, who are you?
Oh, I'm sorry, David Zoltan. I'm up in the Jarvis Square area and have lived in the neighborhood for about 5 or 6 years now. As you can see from the chat, there's a lot of talk about affordable housing and there's a lot of interest in this. And in fact, there's a tremendous amount of discussion going on throughout the city now on what affordable housing means and the dire need for it, as it has been neglected for so many years under previous administrations. We certainly need more than 9 units. I will agree with the statement that was made there. And I'd like to know what would be the feasibility of making this entire project affordable and accessible for the neighborhood, as we need 180,000 units throughout the city. We don't really need more market-based housing in Rogers Park or anywhere else in Chicago. We need units that are affordable for working class families.
Yeah, I can start the answer to that one, if you don't mind. I think to shed a little light on the process up to this point, our interfacing with Alder Hadden and Torrance Gardner has had us showing previous iterations of this project that were smaller and that were larger. Certainly there's a sort of a sweet spot for a developer to make sure that they're not putting too much risk on the table. So biting off too much can be negative as well. What we were sort of hearing from the community over time was that a slightly larger building would naturally produce a larger percentage of, or the same percentage, meaning more units as that same percentage of more units. So we were trying to build a slightly larger building in order to meet that need. Arguably also, I'll say, I think Ibrahim is, I think he'll tell you he's in the market of providing affordable housing, maybe not in the traditional sense that the city is saying. I fully agree with you, David. There needs to be more affordable housing in the city. But I think the types of units that we're showing here are not only varied in size and shape, but they're going to vary in affordability for multitude of types of tenants. And I think that helps bring value to the neighborhood. That's my 2 cents.
Well, James, I appreciate that. There's
David, sorry, one second. I'm going to chime in on answering you as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Just to say that, I know more affordable housing units is a priority for our city. So we've also kind of reached out to housing and the development department as well, to, knowing that people are going to want to see more affordable units, but as part of our kind of process in working with Ibrahim and his team to see what other financing methods are available, because I'll say it comes down to financing. for the developer a lot of times on their profits and what they can do and the sustainability of their project. But we have tapped housing and development to help us look for ways to bring more affordable units to this project. So no immediate answers yet, but just know that that's definitely in the works as a thing that we want to work towards more of.
That'd be wonderful, Maria. I'd like to hear then a commitment from James and Abraham then that they will work with you, and that if that financing can be provided and the community can come together and even perhaps help you towards that goal, that there will be more affordable housing than what is presented in this project. At this time, that there will be affordable units that will be provided at multiple levels of affordability, including for those people who who most need it at the 20%, 30%, and even 40% AMI levels, and that if there is a commitment to do that, I am certain that there will be help from the community to make sure that you can get the help to get the financing and to push for whatever is needed from the federal, state, and local levels. Is that something that you can commit to?
David, do you mind if I paraphrase your question? Because I think
Sure.
I hear what you're asking is, are they committed to working with the community, working with my office to find ways to finance more affordable units?
Yes. And at different levels of affordability, not just at the 60% AMI, which we have known for a very long time is not sufficient for the affordable needs of the city.
Ibrahim, I don't want to speak for you, but that is our intent. Yes.
I mean, we definitely will explore these possibilities with the older woman, and we'll do what we can. If we get assistance in financing and support, to cover some of the costs for those additional affordable, we'll explore it. We are open.
Thank you both. And thanks, David. I'm going to go to the chat for our next question. And then being mindful of time, I'll ask folks, we could be flexible. We've got some discussion things for breakout rooms, but if folks are kind of enjoying being together in the space and doing the Q&A, we're happy to just continue the Q&A instead of the breakout rooms.
We raise hands to determine.
Yeah, if you want to use the Zoom right hand or you can
raise hand or thumbs up.
You want to stay together asking questions? Thumbs up, reactions. Okay. All right, I'm going to take this question in the chat, and this is from Amanda and Stephen Logan. So question about the seismic impact that could be and some of the damage to neighboring homes or foundations and some of the land that's still pending. So a question about kind of the impact from previous projects, and I'm imagining as well the impact for future projects. James, I know you addressed kind of the flooding piece, but thinking about the seismic impact there, if you could speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, whoever we use to construct this project, and I can say Ibrahim has already been in touch with 2 different builders for planning for that effort. Our neighbors' safety is first and foremost. So certainly not building a basement garage will help get us out of the ground sooner. And then the sort of movement that happens as a function of the natural course of construction of a building of this size. I will say I don't think this project will be a concrete frame building, which tends to be quite loud, and so I think that will help. I can't speak to the specifics too much, but I think it's certainly on our minds that we will be mindful of that, and our distance from our neighbors to the east and west will help give us some comfort level there.
Thanks for that.
Sorry, Alderman.
Oh,
if I may just piggyback again off of James, one of the additional benefits to actually us seeking the zoning change relief in particular is this goes through a multitude of additional scrutiny as a zoning map amendment through all of the interior departments over at the city of Chicago, in particular the Department of Planning and their subdivisions. One of those subdivisions is civil engineering. So this, before any permit is issued, it's going to have to pass an even higher level of scrutiny than would have an as of right project. So the civil engineers for the city of Chicago are going to ensure that the proposal that we have in front of you or whatever may ultimately move forward will pass the elevated standards for the city of Chicago and have no impact on the adjacent properties. So that's an incidental but added benefit, I think, for the entire community kind of more broadly as well.
Thanks for that, Sarah. And folks appreciated that additional answer. And I'll just give an immediate add on to that too, based on a comment from Croydon of some folks, doubting, kind of based on some of the previous work done. I'll say that you've also got your alderperson here. So in addition to all the city standards, that's also my job, right? To make sure that they're following the rules, they're doing what they're supposed to. And I'm happy to say we're here with Ibrahim sharing with you today because we were able to come to compliance on the parking lot.
There's going to be obviously tension between the density and the need for affordable housing, as we were seeing in this chat. The goal is, y'all, we are really going to try to strike a balance as much as we can, because we know the tension is showing right now in the dialogue clearly, but we'll definitely work to try to find the balance as best we can.
All right. Eric, you're next.
So I want to thank Alderperson Hadden and our team for having this, and for James and Ibrahim for being here and listening. I guess I want to just voice some of our suspicions and let you respond in whatever way you see fit. The affordable housing is just used as a selling technique for these sorts of developments whenever they enter any neighborhood, be it Logan Square, be it Pilsen, be it Humboldt Park. So that's not convincing. You're doing the legal minimum of 10% plus one unit. And there are already available units in 1246, 1243. I called BJB, they sent me a list of about 24 available affordable housing units within a half mile here. But the need for affordable housing citywide, yes, in Rogers Park, highly, highly questionable. And this 9 units is not going to address that, and it's not the real purpose of a 7-story building. Our suspicion is that you're just trying to maximize profits. The thing that troubled me the most is that in the proposal, you referred to other buildings that are over the RS2 designation. That is patently disingenuous. Those buildings were built decades before modern zoning codes, which came about in the late 50s. So those are irrelevant. The question is, does the need for 9 additional units of affordable housing justify a zoning change that might set a precedent for future development in this neighborhood, as it has in Humboldt Park, Logan Square, Lincoln Park, and Pilsen? Those are our concerns. Those are my fears. Yeah, I'm going to lose 2 hours of sunlight. That doesn't justify ending an entire proposal. But these other concerns of altering the character and the nature of Rogers Park just to maximize the profits for an owner and a developer, when a 3-story building would also add 3 or 4 units of affordable housing. So those are my main concerns. You can address them in any way you see fit.
I'm not sure.
Whom you asking the question to? To me as a developer?
I can't speak to the to the risk you assume, Ibrahim. So maybe you can shed some light on that. But it's a balance.
Don't see. I mean, we all in a business somehow, in the different trades we have. Some of us are developers, some of us restaurant owners, grocery owners, lumber yard owners, older women or aldermen. I mean, it's nothing wrong with maximizing the profit, but there is some of us who are passionate on what they do, you know, and we enjoy it like you enjoy whatever trade you have. That's our enjoyment, is to do what we do and do it within the legal system and with permitting, etc. I know I started paving the lot in the wrong way, but that's, we make mistakes, okay? But there's nothing wrong with making profit.
And Eric, I appreciate your question and comments, and say that I think that there's a huge tension in how we do development, how it's been done in the city. And as you mentioned, the different neighborhoods where we've seen it kind of go out of control. I can say, you know, here in the 49th Ward and largely in Rogers Park, that hasn't been a huge problem for us. There are a lot of reasons for that. To give you an idea, you know, I think many of you know I sit on the Committee on Zoning and Landmarks, and I think we've had 2 or 3 things up for a zoning change, not new developments. And some of the areas where we think of closer to downtown, some of my colleagues, they've got multiple items every month, right? Like the boom is real. I think in many places there, it's a little unchecked. You know, I think we see some good examples, right? Over in the 35th Ward with Alderman Carlos Rosa. He's taken a really intentional community planning process, and you know, he's in his 2nd term, right, his 5th year, and they're just kind of seeing some of the fruits of that. If they've been working with neighbors to think about intentional whole scopes. So they've been working on rezoning some lots around Milwaukee to prevent and helpfully slow down the pace. So we have looked, and a lot of our community process is modeled on his, actually. And so I think from our office, that's a bit of the check that we have. There are things that we don't have community say or aldermanic control over when it comes to private lots and private developments. And so there's that piece. But then we're in a space like this where I think we have a real opportunity with someone like Ibrahim, who, you know, he's got a long history here. I'll say he's an owner and a building manager. And in my short time in this role, I'll tell you, I'll take one of those any day over a BJB, as we think about how we work together and what that looks like. So I know he's listening. I know his team's listening. We're certainly listening. And I think that I think this is going to be a good process of us working together, incorporating some of these concerns and feedbacks, and maybe really coming with a nice project that adds housing, that adds affordable housing, accessible housing. I'll say that's another benefit we have with some of the new construction with elevator buildings, as we look at some of the housing needs we have. But it's not a complete question or answer to you, Eric, I know, but know that it's on our mind, and we'll kind of continue working on that. Thanks, Eric. Robert.
Hello, just a moment. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep,
okay, I'm not sure if my video is on or not.
The video is not on, but we can hear you.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay. Yeah. It seems to me that plenty of developments go on all over the neighborhood and all over the city that keep to the zoning requirements, such as the one across the street there. I don't remember the exact number of it. But certainly those projects go forward at that lower height, which is roughly 3 stories, because the developers are able to make a profit even building at that height. So if there's a concern about being able to make a profit, I have no problem with that. I have a problem with building something that is completely out of character with the neighborhood that I love to live in so much. And I am one of those people who lives that would be in the shadow of that building, especially in the winter. Our mornings would be completely bereft of light. And it's a human right. Sunshine, especially in the winter, is a human right. And I think everyone should ask themselves, would they want this building going up right across the street from them? It's a legitimate question to ask. And I'm very in favor of affordable housing. And I would love to see that lot developed. I would like to see it developed at a height that is in keeping with the nature of the neighborhood that I live in, which is basically how it is zoned right now. And I want to emphasize again also, I think something Eric said, these two buildings that are tall are like 100 years old and they predate modern zoning. And it's zoned such that it is across the street for a reason. It's because it helps keep the city on a human scale. And all of the research in the world that's ever done shows that cities begin losing their sense of neighborliness. People express more dissatisfaction. The higher and higher and higher the housing units go. They feel less part of the neighborhood around them. And there's a terrible example right at the corner of Morse and Wayne, which people opposed. It got pushed through. And this being Chicago, we know how. And it's a huge bunker of a building just by the sheer size of it that has nothing to do with the rest of the city around it. It's unwelcoming. It's an unfriendly presence as a structure. So my question is it not possible to make a nice profit for a developer to build on that lot, but keeping it at a level that would be in keeping with the rest of the structures around it?
Yeah. I can, we're getting into some hypotheticals a little bit too, and I'm not a developer, but I do work with a lot of them. And we run multiple feasibilities for these types of projects all the time. Bear in mind, Ibrahim is a long-term commitment operation. So his, more units for him means more managed units in the future. And to me, it means more flexibility for market changes, whether Rogers Park becomes a very expensive neighborhood down the road or turns the other direction. 78 units provides a certain amount of affordable housing by virtue of this percentage we're talking about. Were you to build something shorter, let's say 2 or 3 stories, you'd be dealing with fewer units, you'd be dealing with larger units, and then likely you'd be dealing with, you'd be building probably condos or very high-end rental properties that to me is not suitable for the neighborhood and doesn't play nice with the market that exists there. These are the thoughts that go through my mind when I try to propose options to our developers. And I think aside from the fact that you wouldn't be able to afford an elevator for a modest heighted building, 3 or 4 stories, I think the accessibility benefits and the ability to move with a market, an ever-changing market, I think is the benefit to everybody talking here.
Thank you for the comments and the question, Robert, and thank you, James. We're nearing our end, and we actually have another kind of interactive poll that we want to get a little bit of input on before we close tonight, and I want to be able to give you guys some next steps as well. So I'm going to, all right, we're gonna move on to poll number 2. So this is just kind of like a first take, right? So some of you have looked at the materials before, you've seen a presentation, you've been part of a bit of a discussion. If you can take a few minutes here, these are simple yes, no, just to give us a little bit of a temp check of where people on this call are. And while you guys are taking a moment to answer those questions, I'll share a bit on the next steps and a bit of our process. So just to reiterate, there's not going to be a yes, no decision after this meeting. So this isn't, hey, is the Alderwoman going to support the zoning change and process that application? Or am I going to say, no, Ibrahim, we're not going to consider that. This is part of our development process. So we've had a few conversations and meetings with Ibrahim and his team. We've looked at different considerations. We've talked to planning and development and housing and trying to get a little input from the city. We're getting input from you in this first round. we're going to have a survey that you will have access to and that we'll share around the ward as well. That'll be out for about 3 weeks, just as we're going over the holidays, wanting to give people enough time. And we're going to take all of that feedback. We're going to share it back to you. It'll be available on our website and in the newsletter. But most importantly, we're going to bring that with us back to Ibrahim and his team, right? So let's talk about what were the biggest considerations, what are the concerns, what are the things that we think we need to see more of, how can we maybe bring more resources to the table to get more affordable units, what other priorities do we need to see here, and what are other options. So Ibrahim's not going anywhere. So one of the benefits to him being around in a long-term part of the community is we've got time for conversation here. We've got time for planning and discussion. And I think that whatever changes and are incorporated, we'll bring back to you as well. So this is not your last opportunity to weigh in on this. Most of us aren't going anywhere anyway, and we're getting pretty good turnout on all of our Zoom meetings with this pandemic. So I appreciate you being here. So we've got lots of time to talk. So take a moment for that and just know that next steps, again, we'll share the survey. I saw, David, you have a question about accessibility. Yes. And maybe that came up a couple times. I'm wondering in this last moment, James, you can probably do this most quickly to the accessibility currently planned in, maybe the units and the types.
Yeah, right. So we'll be providing requisite type A and type B units for code required accessibility, Illinois accessibility required units across our unit types and across locations in the building. This is standard operating procedure for City of Chicago. And when I say type A and type B units, I mean there are 2 levels of accessibility that we build into all of our multifamily projects, visitable and fully accessible. So, grab bars and appropriately heighted countertops and reach ranges will be considered throughout the building common areas and in a certain percentage of our units across all unit types.
And then David, I'm going to take that follow-up question and we'll bring it back to the team there about ANSI type A's, and we can talk more about that. I appreciate everybody commenting in the chat and bringing your ideas. This is a very Rogers Park meeting, which I love. Lots of strong opinions and ideas, great questions. And thank you. Thank you for showing up. Torrance, do you want to talk a little bit about the survey? Yeah.
Definitely. So after the end of this call, tomorrow we'll be sharing the link for all those who have attended, as well as to the wider public, our list of our survey questions that will list similar questions that you're seeing tonight, but more open-ended questions that we're not able to get brought to at the breakout rooms. But we'll also be, asking for additional feedback within that survey. So it's not just a yes or no survey, which is very crucial, so we can better understand folks' point of view who cannot express it tonight or who are not able to attend the meeting. And then from that survey, we'll be taking feedback for about 3 weeks on that. And then from that survey, we'll bring it to the developer if needed for any revisions and potentially another community meeting. As Alderwoman had said, this is an initial step. This is not a yes or no tonight. And the survey will be very crucial in helping us make a decision down the line, but also where revisions are going to be needed to be made throughout this process. So please fill out that survey.
Yeah.
Before we end, let's go ahead and share out these poll results as well with folks. So I'm going to end the poll if you haven't done it.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, too late. We'll share the results.
Right. So we're looking, it was interesting, as proposed, this is a development you can support, and you guys can see 20% said yes, 31% said no. Looks like we're pretty split about, in your opinion, is more density a good thing on this block? The third question, is the proposed height of the building a concern for you? 29 yeses, 22 nos. With this proposed building, there's a potential increase in new residential customers. Is increase in economic growth for local businesses a priority for you? 34 people said yes, and 17 said no. And then, does this proposed building offer enough green space in its design? Pretty split there too on the yes and no's. And then similarly, would you like to see more affordable housing on this site? Almost an equal split with 26 yes and 25 no's. And then, do you have concerns about the parking plan for this development? It's got 30 yeses and 21 no's. So as Torrance mentioned, oh, go ahead, Torrance. I was going to say, as Torrance mentioned, thanks for doing this. This just gives us a good temp check, right? And I think is pretty reflective of some of the discussion we saw in the chat and some of the questions we heard. The survey has open-ended questions. There's going to be more space for you to kind of elaborate on some of your thoughts, opinions, and suggestions. And of course, we also had a lot of people email us questions and things that we have been collecting and forwarding on as well. So appreciate you guys. Thank you for being here. Thanks to Ibrahim and James and Sarah and the team. Yeah, I hope folks have a good night. And this recording, we'll put it on our YouTube channel and share it via our socials for folks who want to watch the video again. And of course, we'll put it on the website.
Alderman Ibrahim, I just want to thank everybody. Thank the Alderwoman, thank Torrance, thanks to Leslie and James and Sarah and all our good neighbors who support and doesn't support. We love you all, and we really enjoy the hearing your voice toward this project.
Thank you guys, and thanks Ibrahim. All right,
Thank you.
everyone take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Be well.